I started just, imitating the superhero things of the day, and I was really desperately trying to capture that kind of perfect dead line. And it took me close to 20 years to actually figure out what the implement that was used to make that line. I tried ballpoint pens and flare pens and all those different kinds of things, and I later realized it was a brush. It's actually a watercolor brush, a very expensive thing that is not made for ink at all. So I tried the brush, and it was like the ugliest thing I've ever seen. It just came out horrible. I thought, this is truly impossible. This can't be right. But, years and years later, I finally got proficient at it.
Clowes gave us an exclusive reading from one of his favourite strips. And when you hear it in his own voice, the full sense of existential angst really does come across.
This husband and wife detective team are in town investigating the disappearance of this missing child, and we see that they're eating at a Chinese restaurant, and the husband's complaining, why did you tell the guy to meet us here when you know I hate Chinese food? And she says, maybe I'd like Chinese food once in a while. And he's like, okay, well, live it up. They're kind of looking out the window with these blank expressions, and she says, seems like a cute town, and says, yeah, well, they all do it first. It's just another hole filled with worthless pigs. And we see them, they're meeting with this police officer from this small town who gives them a copy of this ransom note that was written by the person who took the child. And we see them later in the hotel room, and the husband, Mr. Ames, is very carefully going over the note while his wife is bored out of her mind laying in bed. She's not happy in this relationship, and he's completely oblivious to her problem, and he's trying to study this note, and he hears music coming through the wall. So he says, why does that guy have to have it so loud? And starts shouting at the guy through the wall, and the wife can sort of see that this is the way he works. He builds up to these big frenzies of anger, and she's trying to stop it. Don't, Joe, stop it, Joe. And then we see that the guy's gone next door and held his gun on this guy. He's a big shot private investigator, and this guy's just some poor schmuck playing his radio too loud in the motel. And by the time he comes back, his wife is gone. And so we see him down in the hotel bar, and he says to the bartender, tell me, friend, are you a married man? And the guy says, no, sir, and says, it's a lot of trouble, but sure can be worth it if you find the right girl. He's got this sort of self-deluding sentimental streak, and hours later he goes back into the room, and the wife is asleep, and he apologizes, and we see that it's this sort of thing that keeps happening, and he goes over to the window and says, this world would be absolutely unbearable without you. We sense that she doesn't quite buy this. That's it.
Dan Clowes' deadpan world is only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the American cult comic strip. And maybe because the so-called funnies have become in America such an important way of saying things that can't otherwise be said, certainly not in news or TV, they've acquired the status of genuinely popular works of art. There's a very distinct strain of darkness running through the American comic strip. I think it first burst onto American popular awareness, and I mean burst because it burst like a boil, in the work of Robert Crumb, who from the 1960s onwards created these seething psychedelic fantasies. He's the comic strip poet of the Beats and the Hippies, although his poetry is scabrous and sick, throwing acid in the face of the acid generation. Art Spiegelman's probably been the main influence on serious comic book artists today, although he's more moralist than satirist. He's best known for his extraordinary retelling of the Holocaust, called Mouse. Spiegelman perversely used the language of cheery cartoon comedy, with the Germans as cats and the Jews as mice. The book gets its power precisely from the mix of awful subject matter and incongruous, pathetic little animal figures. This is the description of a group of Jews being taken to the death camps. It's a mark of Spiegelman's wry, sideways ingenuity that something so innocuously drawn could be so affecting. Mickey Mouse it certainly isn't.